Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. I hope your day and your week are going very well so far. College football week 6 is officially here, and I have a ton of picks to go ahead and share with you guys. But first, as always, people, please make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. It helps the channel grow, and it really does mean a ton to us. We are on the road to 100,000 subscribers here on the channel. We are over 91,000 right now, so we are less than 9,000 away from our goal. Our goal, obviously, is to hit 100K before the end of the year. We're pretty close, but we need your help to get there, guys. So if you haven't already, please consider hitting that subscribe button down below. We have a ton of great content here on the channel, and the best part of it is every pick that we hand out here on the Guy Boston Sports YouTube channel is 100% free. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. I have a whopping 14 picks. That's right, 14 picks to go ahead and share with you guys for the Week 6 college football slate. But first, before we dive into this week's picks, a quick little recap of how we did last week. And overall, guys, not a terrible week, but not a good week either. We went 7-8 overall, with a lot of tough gut punch losses there, especially towards the end of the night. Obviously, we had the Georgia moneyline play, which looked dead to start with, then looked like we were back, and then we quickly died again. Oregon should have covered that minus 24.5, but unfortunately, a pick 6 from Dylan Gabriel cost us. So a lot of tough, close losses there for us. We had a couple misfires too. Obviously, we thought UCF versus Colorado was a lock. Obviously, we were wrong, and Colorado blew the doors off of UCF. UNC up, they had a 20-0 lead. They ended up losing 21-20 to Duke. So a lot of tough losses there last week. Overall, 7-8 though last week. And then on the season total so far, 24-30 overall. So we're still looking to go ahead and really get going here and get hot. I do think we have a pretty good slate here this week to go ahead and turn the ship around. So let's not waste any more time, guys. Let's dive into this week's picks. Like I said, guys, no time to waste here. We're jumping right into the outlier screen and our first of 14 picks in this Week 6 college football slate. By the way, guys, we have a long video here, obviously, with 14 picks. It's going to be a longer video, but as I've done the last few weeks, I will put the chapters or the time cards in the description, so you can go ahead and bounce around between games to go ahead and follow along a little easier. And of course, the final picks, will be placed in the pinned comment. So anyways, guys, our first pick of 14 picks in this Week 6 college football slate, we are targeting the Michigan State-Oregon game on Friday night, 9 p.m. We're going Oregon here under 38.5 points in the team total. It's available for minus 130 on FanDuel, minus 135 BetMGM, and minus 140 DraftKings. As always, guys, make sure to shop around for the best sportsbook odds available. I know our Friday night football record has been a little shaky so far, but this might be actually my favorite pick of the entire slate. We got the Oregon under here, 38.5 points. They've actually cashed this at a 75% hit rate this year. 3 out of 4 games this season, they've cashed the under here. They are averaging 36 points per game with a couple of really close calls, right? 37 points versus Boise State back in week 2. They had 34 points last week versus UCLA. Again, they should have went over 38.5 points, but some mistakes there with that pick 6 in particular really costing them. The only game this season so far they've gone over was in week 3 versus Oregon State, where they had 49-14 win over Oregon State. And it's not just the fact that Oregon has already cashed the under at a 75% hit rate this year. It's all about the matchup to me. And you see here in points allowed, really good matchup versus Michigan State's defense here. Michigan State tied for 39th in the nation in scoring defense, averaging 19 points per game allowed. Again, they gave up 38 points last week versus Ohio State. We actually cashed the under in that bet last week. But, Ohio State, obviously one of the better offenses in college football, definitely a higher ranked offense than Oregon's right now. And they held them to under 40. If they can cash the line versus Ohio State, I see no reason why they can't cash the line here versus Oregon. And across the board, you see Michigan State's defense, a lot of great metrics to look at here. Right, top 50 in both passing yards and rushing yards allowed in the nation. Top 30 in yards per play. One of the best pass rushers in the nation. Top 20 in sacks per game. 3 sacks per game from this Michigan State defense, And they played some tough teams, right? Including, obviously, last week, Ohio State. Top 25 in quarterback hits. So a lot of great metrics here for this Michigan State defense. Top 25 in red zone efficiency. The only place where they're not really good defensively, you see, is third down conversions, 94th in the nation, which is not great. And they don't force a ton of turnovers, tied 71st in the nation in turnovers, forcing 1.2 turnovers per game. But again, this is a Michigan State defense that's been solid all season long. And again, their numbers are a little bit skewed there because of that Ohio State game last week. And another place where I really like the matchup here is the matchup with Michigan State's pass rush versus Oregon's offensive line. Oregon hasn't had the toughest schedule in college football thus far, and yet their offensive line is a little concerning here. You do see the sack numbers. They are outside the top 50 in both sacks allowed and quarterback hits. And of course, like we just talked about, Michigan State top 25 in both of those metrics here. Oregon giving up 1.8 sacks sacks per game, going up against the Michigan State defense that averages 3 sacks per game, and the quarterback hits 1.8 per game. Again, Michigan State averaging 3.4 quarterback hits per game. So really good numbers there overall. I think it's a really solid matchup. This is one of my favorite picks of the entire slate. And just to prove it to you guys, we're going to do a little giveaway here for this pick. All you have to do is comment down Ducks. And if this under cashes, we'll go ahead and give one lucky commenter a free $15 Amazon gift card. So comment down Ducks, and we'll go ahead and give one lucky commenter, if the bet hits, a $15 Amazon gift card. And how that will work is whoever I pick the winner, I'll go ahead and give you my Instagram handle, and you're going to DM me personally on Instagram. So we're going to give you the gift card. All right, guys, next up, our second pick in this week's slate. We're targeting the UCLA-Penn State game, 12 p.m. kickoff. We're going Penn State here on the team total over now, 37.5 points. So the last pick was Oregon under 38.5 points. This pick is Penn State over 37.5 points. Now, unlike the Oregon one, the actual data so far this year hasn't been great. They've only cashed the over in 1 out of 4 games so far this year. They scored 56 points versus Kent State. The other games, a couple of close misses there versus West Virginia, 34 points in this game. And then last week versus Illinois, just 21 points. But Illinois, a pretty solid defense. Truth be told, I was actually leaning on the spread here for Penn State. They are a major favorite versus UCLA, but UCLA has actually covered these big spreads 2 weeks in a row versus both LSU and Oregon. So taking Penn State, although James Franklin's 63% cover rate when he's a favorite of 10 points or more in his career, not just this season, in his career. So I was tempted, and I kind of still am leaning on Penn State spread, but playing it safe here because they're such a heavy favorite. I think it's like 28 points, I want to say, is the spread. Might be a little bit less, but around 28 points. I'm going to take the team total here over 37.5 points because if they do cover that spread, you got to imagine they're going to go ahead and score some points here. UCLA obviously gave up 34 points last week to Oregon. Again, a game where they probably should have given up a little bit more here. It's a really solid matchup here for Penn State. Look at UCLA's defense, tied 104th in the nation, giving up 30.8 points per game versus a Penn State offense that's scoring 36.2 points per game, tied for 30th in the country. I mean, you can go ahead and look here across the board. The metrics don't look good at all. Penn State, top 10 running team in the nation. Now, actually, that is one of the few strengths of UCLA is their run defense, tied 33rd, but they also have the 127th pass defense in college football. I expect Drew Allard to go ahead and pick this defense apart. And one extra added bonus, this UCLA pass rush is non-existent. You see here, tied 107th in the nation in sacks, tied 74th in the nation in quarterback hits. So they're not really putting a lot of pressure on the quarterback here. And you look at Penn State's offensive line, it's kind of been an interesting talking point with them. Tied 49th in the nation, tied 59th for quarterback hits, tied 49th for sacks. So their offensive line is okay. It's not great, but UCLA just doesn't have the defensive line to take advantage of that. Drew Allard should have plenty of time to go ahead and sit the pocket and pick apart this UCLA defense. It's not a very good defensive team. It's not a very good UCLA team in general, and they've had a really brutal schedule. I think that part of that goes into this, right? There's got to be some fatigue setting in here. You played LSU on the road, then you came back home to play Oregon. Now you're back on the road to go ahead and play Penn State. Really tough environment there. I just don't like the matchup at all for UCLA. I love the matchup for Penn State. I think Penn State will score a ton of points in this game. I think they're going to score 40 plus, honestly, on this UCLA team. Again, looking for some style points here earlier in the season. But I like Penn State here over 37.5 points. And it's from -110 on DraftKings, -111 on FanDuel. Next pick, guys, we're going Pitt, North Carolina, 12 p.m. kickoff on Saturday. And I'm making up for a mistake I made last week. Now, obviously, I took North Carolina money line last week versus Duke. Had I taken them on the points, had I taken them spread, we would have been fine. We would have actually cashed. I'm not going to make the same mistake twice, although I was leaning on North Carolina money line. I'm going to play it safe here. I'm taking UNC +3 at home versus Pitt. Truth be told, betting on North Carolina again after a horrible loss last week versus Duke, and then obviously the JMU loss the week before. Really bad couple weeks here for the Tar Heels, but I think the public's going to be all over Pitt here, which could be an advantage for us. Looking at Pitt so far this year, I just don't think this team is as battle-tested as North Carolina is. You look at their schedule so far, their most impressive wins are, you can either take the West Virginia win or the Cincinnati win, but both of those teams, they're okay. West Virginia's 2-2 overall, Cincinnati 3-2. They're both in the bottom half of the standings in the Big 12 Conference. You know, you can take those two wins for what they are, but they were very close, right? They barely beat Cincinnati. They barely beat West Virginia. I think this Pitt team just hasn't really been battle-tested in the way that I think North Carolina obviously has. One key data point that I really love in this matchup is the away and home data. Now, North Carolina straight up has been 8-2 in their last 10 home games. So North Carolina at home over the last 10 home games have been dominant here. And Pitt on the road, they're 1-5 straight up in their last 6 road games. So that's talking straight up. That's talking money line, right? So Pitt has struggled on the road a little bit here. North Carolina have been a little bit better at home over the last 10 games. There are only 2 losses coming against Notre Dame this year, and apologies, I don't know where Notre Dame came from. Their 2 losses at home over the last 10 games have been to Virginia and to JMU. Listen, Notre Dame fan had Notre Dame on the brain. So they've only lost 2 of their last 10 games at home. Again, Pitt 1-5 in the last 6 road games. But look at the spread numbers here when home versus road. The Pitt Panthers have absolutely struggled on the road. Just a 17% hit rate against the spread overall, but a 0% hit rate on this Pitt -3 line. You see each of their last, look at that, 6 road games. Again, 1-5 on the road. Their only win on the road came this year at Cincinnati. They beat them 28-27. That's the only time they covered the spread in their last 6 road games. So this is a Pitt team that you see has struggled. Now, they've played some really good teams there. You see Notre Dame on the schedule. That's obviously last season. Duke, Virginia Tech, West Virginia, Wake Forest, right? Some decent competition there, but overall, Pitt has struggled on the road over the last year or two. So that's obviously a big talking point here. And then just overall, the Pitt defense, they're 82nd in the nation in scoring despite not having the toughest schedule, right? 25.5 points per game. This North Carolina offense, 37th in the nation, 34.4 points per game. I just think the North Carolina offense has a pretty solid matchup here versus a Pitt defense that's already kind of shaky from a number standpoint to begin with. You see they're the 93rd in the nation in passing yards allowed. North Carolina obviously top 15 passing yards. So I do like the matchup here for North Carolina's offense versus Pitt's defense. Again, I like the money line, but I'm going to play it safe this week and take the points here with UNC +3. All right, guys, next up, our 4th pick in this week's slate. We're going with the Iowa-Ohio State game. 3:30 p.m. kickoff on Saturday. We're going Ohio State, Iowa over 44.5 points, available for -125 on DraftKings, -128 on FanDuel, and -140 on Bet365. And look, guys, this has been a very surprising season from Iowa. They're actually 4-0 on the overs so far this year. I don't think anybody in their right mind would have ever predicted this for Iowa, but obviously with Cade McNamara now at quarterback, a little bit more focus on offense here for the Hawkeyes. They've covered the over in 4 straight games. The sportsbooks have not been able to adjust to these Iowa totals just yet. You see every single game has gone at least 39 or higher for Iowa. It's a pretty impressive mark when you consider the history of Iowa football always being these kind of defensive games, these slow, boring, kind of low-scoring battles here. And lately, Iowa, these games have been pretty exciting, right? A lot of big games there for the Hawkeyes so far this year. Now, we're talking about the specific line of 44.5, just a 50% hit rate this year. This over 44.5 line. Again, a little bit of a higher line. They have cashed each of the last 2 weeks, though, versus Troy and versus Minnesota. This total cashed each of the last 2 weeks. For Ohio State overall this year, a 75% hit rate on overs, 3-1 record on the overs this year for Ohio State, but at this 44.5 line, 4-0 record so far this year. So you have 2 teams that have been cashing overs pretty consistently, and at this 44.5 line, at least a 50% hit rate this year for both teams. And I do kind of like the matchup. Obviously, we know Ohio State's offense, the number 1 scoring defense in the nation, so that's something to be cautious with here. But offensively, tied for 3rd in the nation in offense. They're averaging 48.8 points per game. Now, obviously, they haven't played a defense quite like Iowa's. The closest thing is obviously last week versus Michigan State. They still scored 38 points on that really solid Michigan State defense here. Now going up against an Iowa defense that's tied for 15th in the nation scoring, giving up 13.8 points per game. But for both sides, I think there's a weakness to attack. When looking at the Ohio State offense versus the Iowa defense, obviously Iowa's pass defense, a little questionable. It's 68th in the nation right now, giving up 210.8 passing yards per game. Obviously, Ohio State's passing offense tied 14th in the nation, 307.8 passing yards per game. So you have a top 15 passing offense going against a defense that's bottom half, I guess you could say. They're 68th overall, guys. That's not a very good pass defense performance, although their run defense obviously top 5 in the nation. Their pass defense 60th overall, not very good. And then on the flip side here, you have an Iowa offense that's top 10 in the nation in running. Now, Ohio State ranks top 10 in both passing yards and rushing yards allowed so far, but they have played no good offenses, including last week. Michigan State's offense kind of atrocious. So they haven't really been tested. This is the toughest offense, believe it or not. Iowa is the toughest offense that they have played so far this year. Pretty cupcake schedule for Ohio State so far. Again, Michigan State, the toughest game thus far, but their offense still not very good. So very interesting. I think Iowa should be able to run the football a little bit here. I think Ohio State will obviously do most of the heavy lifting here with the scoring, but I think Iowa, with this year's team, should be able to contribute just enough to go ahead and cash this over here. So I do like the total, the over of 44.5. All right, guys, next pick, we're targeting the Auburn-Georgia game, 3:30 p.m. kickoff on Saturday. We're going with the Georgia Bulldogs here, -22.5 points against Auburn at home. And look, guys, to put it simply here, I think Georgia will absolutely roll Auburn in this game. Just a really bad matchup. Georgia obviously coming off of that heartbreaking loss against Alabama. What was, I think everyone can agree, one of the best college football games we've seen in quite some time here. I just don't like the spot for this Auburn team. This Auburn team, I know maybe they're a little bit better than their record shows. I don't know, though. They've had some really tough losses this year. They did give Oklahoma a pretty decent challenge last week. I'm just not a fan of Auburn's offense. Excuse me. I just don't think Auburn offensively, they've got some issues at quarterback. I don't think Auburn's going to be able to keep up with Georgia at all in this game. And obviously, the Bulldogs got to be coming in this game a little pissed off, specifically head coach Kirby Smart. I think he's going to lay into his guys a little bit here. I think he's going to, kick his guys in the ass a little bit here. Truth be told, Georgia probably should have won that game. A lot of sloppy football from Georgia at times in that game. Again, it was a really good game, but at times, specifically Carson Beck, some of the interceptions he was throwing, not very good. I know some people might say this could be a letdown spot for Georgia. I think it's the opposite. I think this is a statement game. Obviously, they need to win this game coming off the Alabama loss. I think they're going to take some of that frustration from the Bama loss on Auburn here. And again, an SEC showdown. They need these conference wins at this point now. The Alabama loss. Now, they're not in a bad spot, but the Alabama loss obviously puts some extra pressure on Georgia here. So I like Georgia here, minus 22.5. The line actually dropped a little bit here, which I think favors us. It was like 24.5 yesterday. Now it's at 22.5. A little bit of an easier spot to bet. I like the Bulldogs here, minus 22.5. I think they absolutely roll Auburn here. All right, guys, next up, we move on to the Big Ten Conference. We're going Indiana at Northwestern, 3:30 p.m. kickoff on Saturday. We're going with the Hoosiers here, minus 13.5 points on the road against Northwestern. Indiana has been absolutely rolling so far this year. A very impressive start. I'm going to go ahead and keep riding the hot hand here. They're actually undefeated. They're 5-0 so far this year overall, but they're 5-0 on this line so far this year. They've cashed this minus 13.5 point line in every single game this season. Now, to be fair, you can make the point, who have they played, but even UCLA being probably the most notable game on their schedule so far, not really that impressive of a victory. It's between UCLA and Maryland for who's the toughest team they played, and neither of those teams I would call particularly tough. So interesting spot there, to consider with Northwestern. Is this team going to be a little bit too much for Indiana to take? But I do still like the matchup. They're 80% overall against the spread, so they actually covered the spread in 4 out of 5 games overall at the overall total part. But again, at the minus 13.5 line, they've actually 5-0. And look, Northwestern has been a spread darling, right? They've actually been covering the spread at a pretty decent rate at this plus 13.5 point line. Again, an 80% hit rate. Overall, just a 40% hit rate against the spread this season. But this Northwestern team's been a little more challenged, right? They played Washington last week. They played Duke. They've actually had a pretty decent schedule so far this season. But again, ultimately, I'm going to keep riding the hot hand of Indiana. I don't see why the Hoosiers shouldn't cover this line. Now, obviously, Northwestern, we know a top 25 defense, scoring defense-wise in the nation. But you have an Indiana offense that's tied for third, 48.8 points per game. And their strength actually is a weakness of Northwestern. You see their passing yards per game, 18th in the nation, 302 passing yards per game for this Hoosier offense. Going up against a Northwestern defense, 83rd, giving up 222 passing yards allowed. They're a top 10 run defense, but their passing defense leaves a lot to be desired there. Really good spot for Indiana, I think, take advantage of that. And the defensive side, obviously, we know Northwestern's offense, 122nd in the nation, not very good at all, versus an Indiana defense is only giving up 13 points per game. So Indiana, I'm going to keep riding the hot hand here. They're obviously a darling right now. Could be a potential letdown spot, potentially, but I'm going to keep riding them until they let me down. I'm riding with the Hoosiers here, minus 13.5. Again, minus 112 there on DraftKings, minus 110 Bet365, also available on FanDuel and BetMGM. And real quick, guys, before we dive into the rest of this week's picks, a quick word from our partners at FanDuel. That's right, guys. FanDuel and Guy Boston Sports have officially partnered together to bring you guys this very special offer. For new customers, when you use the link down below in the description and bet $5, you'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Let me repeat that for you guys just in case you think I'm lying here. New customers, when you use that link down below in the description and bet $5, you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Guys, that's free money to go ahead and throw in some picks to go ahead and make some more money. It's as simple and it's as easy as that. So if you're not a FanDuel customer already and you want to go ahead and make some money in the sports betting world, this is your chance, guys. Take this offer, take advantage of it. It's free bets, it's free money to go ahead and start your bankroll, to build your bankroll up. If you're a new sports bettor, it's a nice, easy way so you're not feeling guilty about, maybe some early struggles. Again, gambling is a very difficult sport sometimes. It's nice to have some free bets so you can go ahead and you have a little less stress going into it. So one more time, guys, check that link down below in the description. Bet $5 a new customer, get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Shout out to FanDuel for partnering with us for today's video. All right, guys, back to the picks. Next up here, we're going with Ole Miss, South Carolina, 3:30 p.m. kickoff here. We're going with the Rebels, minus 8.5, and a nice bounce back spot for Lane Kiffin. Obviously, a really disappointing loss last week versus Kentucky. I think this is a really good bounce back spot, though, for Ole Miss. Top 5 scoring defense in the nation, so really good matchup here versus a South Carolina offense I'm not totally sold on. And obviously, offensively, Ole Miss, top 10 still in the nation versus the South Carolina defense that is top 30, to be fair, but I do like the matchup overall. I just think Lane Kiffin is one of the best coaches in college football. I think this is a spot now with Ole Miss coming off that Kentucky loss where now the season gets a little muddier, right? They haven't even played their toughest games yet this year. Ole Miss, obviously, team that has college football playoff aspirations here, and that Kentucky loss really throws a wrench in their season. So at this point now, games like South Carolina are must-win games. I think Ole Miss knows that. I think they're well coached, and then they come into this game, and South Carolina is not an easy matchup by any means. You see, they're top 30 in scoring defense, they're top 40 in total and scoring offense. So this is actually a pretty tough spot here, but I do think that Ole Miss is still one of the better teams in the nation. Obviously, a very big letdown last week versus Kentucky, a team that actually South Carolina smacked earlier in the year. But I do like Ole Miss here at -8.5 to go ahead and come on the road and answer coming off that really disappointing Kentucky loss, win this game, roll South Carolina, and convince everybody that we are here, we're a college football playoff contender, and we deserve to be there. Again, they haven't even played their toughest schedule yet, right? A lot of their tough games are coming. They need to win this game. It's literally a must-win spot here for Ole Miss. And I think that Lane Kiffin is a good enough coach to get his guys ready for a moment like this. I love Jackson Dart. I love this team they have here at Ole Miss. I think they roll South Carolina here, -8.5. All right, guys, next up, maybe the best game of the week. We have number 9 ranked Missouri going up against the number 25 ranked Texas A&M here. And I'll be honest, originally I was leaning Texas A&M. I actually had picked Texas A&M before I was recording this video. And then right before I hit the record button, I noticed something that was very intriguing. Now, look, Missouri's undefeated so far this year. I mean, it's hard to go ahead and be negative about a team that's 4-0, but I just think they haven't really played anybody particularly tough. And then when you look at the toughest games they have played, which were Boston College and Vanderbilt, who, again, I wouldn't necessarily call these teams the toughest of matchups. They were close games, right? They survived Boston College 27-21. They survived Vanderbilt 30-27. Again, those aren't pushover teams, but they're also not top 25 teams. They're not these really tough competitors competition here. And you obviously have a Texas A&M team, that's pretty battle-tested so far, right? Obviously, they lose to Notre Dame in week 1, but that's their only loss. They've also went ahead and beat Florida. They beat Arkansas, right? They've gone 4-0 since then. They've gotten some impressive wins on the way. So this Aggies team is battle-tested, and they're obviously at home here, so it's a really good home field advantage there with the Aggies. You saw Notre Dame in week 1. I watched that game full through. I mean, that's a really tough environment when they get it going. Obviously, a matchup here versus a top 10 ranked team. You know that Aggies fan base is going to show out at College Station. But cutting to the chase, guys, the thing that I saw that made me switch my pick off of the Aggies, and again, the reason why, to give you guys a reason why I was leaning Texas A&M, it's because I just don't think Missouri has been battle tested the way that Texas A&M has. On the road, in College Station, really tough on the road matchup there. And a lot of things with Missouri, we just don't know. Obviously, I think a lot of with Missouri, we're looking at how they finished last year, and we're sticking with that image. So far this year, Missouri's offense has not been as dynamic, as hot as it was last year, although defensively they're top 10 in the nation. There's that thing of like how they really played an offense to challenge them. They're going to be challenged this week versus Texas A&M, that's for sure. And Mike Elko has done a fantastic job at A&M. So I was leaning Aggies, but then I see this, and I have to go ahead and bet Missouri, especially if you're getting them at plus money. Look at the discrepancy here. Only 9% of all tickets are on Missouri money line, meaning that the majority of the public are riding Texas A&M. 82% of the money is on Missouri money line. What does that tell you? It means the public is all in on the Aggies, but the sharps, the professional bettors, the wise guys are all in on Missouri. When you see a discrepancy like that, we see 91% of all tickets are on A&M, but only 18% of the money is on A&M. That tells me all I need to know. I think Missouri is the play here. Again, even on the spread bet, 60% of all pick. Now, on the spread bets, you see Missouri getting a lot more public interest, but still discrepancy there. 60% of the bets are on Missouri. 83% of the money is on Missouri. So that means that the sharps, the wise guys on both spread and money line are aligned on Missouri. I'm going to go and put my balls on the table and take Missouri money line here. They're obviously top 10 ranked team for a reason. Again, I do have the question marks. I don't love the pick, but when you see a signal like that, you have to go ahead and bet it. Guys, if you don't think the money and all that stuff plays into it, it absolutely does. It absolutely does. Always fade the public, ride with the sharps here. We're getting it for plus 115 BetMGM, plus 110 DraftKings, plus 110 Bet365. It's a plus money play on every sportsbook that it is available on. All right, guys, next up, we got Colorado State at Oregon State. We're now moving into the nighttime games here. 6:30 p.m. kickoff here. We're going with the Beavers. Oregon State -10.5. Getting that from -118 on FanDuel. Also available on DraftKings and Bet365. And look, guys, coming off that horrible loss versus Oregon back on September 14th, Oregon State had a really good bounce-back win against Purdue. Again, we actually bet Oregon State in that game, and they crushed them 38-21. To be expected, honestly. Purdue's not a very good team. But Oregon State then had a bye week, and now they come back at home here. This is now their third straight home game. Again, they also had the bye week, so they had an extra week to go ahead and prepare for this Colorado State game, which isn't too much of an advantage because Colorado State also had a bye week last week. Their last game, September 21st, versus UTEP there. They did go ahead and win that game coming off of that brutal Colorado loss. I just don't think Colorado State is a very good team. I think it's a very good matchup for an Oregon State team that I think a lot of people look down on because they got blown out by Oregon. But so far this year, it's actually been a pretty decent season for them. They're actually 3-1 overall, and they're actually 3-1 against the spread with this minus 10.5 line. Now, overall against the spread, 50-50. You see, they didn't cover the 28.5 point spread week 1, and they didn't cover, obviously, the plus 18.5 point spread versus Oregon. But at this minus 10.5 point line, which is what we're looking for in this game, they've actually covered it in 3 out of 4 games this year. And to add insult to injury, the Colorado State Rams are 1-8 against the spread in their last 9 games, 11.1% hit rate. So Colorado State not very good against. I mean, go ahead and look at that here against the spread numbers. And obviously Colorado State 20% against the spread. Now, obviously at this plus 10.5 line, they've covered quite a bit here, but they're not usually 10.5 point underdogs with their schedule. But overall, you saw prior to the UTEP game, they actually failed to cover the spread in 8 straight games going into that game. I just don't think this Colorado State team is all that good. I think Oregon State doesn't get the credit they deserve. Obviously, and I know they weren't as good as they were last year when they had DJ Uiagalelei, although seeing how he played this year at Florida State, you wouldn't think that DJ Uiagalelei was that good. But I just think Oregon State's way too good for this line. I think this line should be a little bit higher, to be honest. I like the Beavers here, minus 10.5. I just don't see where the points are going to come for Colorado State. They're 119th in the nation scoring, in Oregon State top 50 defense in the nation. And then look at the other side. Now, Oregon State's offense not superly impressive, but they are scoring 27.8 points per game. And you look at Colorado State's defense, tied for 98th in the nation, 28.5. So this team, 98th in the nation in scoring defense, and they're 119th in scoring overall. I just don't know where Colorado State's going to either score points or stop Oregon State from scoring points. So I like the spot here. I think is a really good spot. All right, guys, next up, this is the pick that you guys might go ahead and click off the video. You're going to think I'm absolutely crazy for going and taking this. We got Clemson, Florida State, 7 p.m. kickoff. I'm going with the Seminoles here, plus 14.5 points at home. And look, guys, I get it. I would understand why you guys would think I might be crazy and click off this video. And I'll be honest, it's a ballsy play. It's absolutely a ballsy play. This is a Florida State team that obviously has been totally disappointed. They're 1-4 now so far this season. Even look at the insides. Clemson Tigers are 7-2 against the spread in the last 9 games. Everything is telling you guys to go ahead and take Clemson in this game, which I totally get it. The only win for Florida State so far this year is back on September 21st versus Cal, where they had a slight win against a Cal team that normally Florida State should blow out. I mean, SMU crushed them last week, 42-16. Why would I ever want to take the Seminoles here? And the answer is simple. It's a backup quarterback game. And I know that might sound stupid to a lot of people, but just like in the NFL, when a backup quarterback comes in, all the cards are off. You never know what's going to happen. They can always be unpredictable. And I think in the case of this game, it's very unpredictable. Look, I think, honestly, DJ Uiagalelei had to go. And it's unfortunate that it had to be an injury that finally benched him. But he needed to be benched. DJ Uiagalelei is not all of Florida State's problem, but he was a major problem for them so far this year. Now you bring in a new quarterback, which obviously not a ton of experience. He's only thrown like 4 passes so far this year. And then the only time we saw him last year was in that bowl game versus Georgia, which I don't really count because most of Florida State's team quit on that game. I guess Brock Glenn actually had a little bit more. He actually did play. I forgot. He played the ACC championship game versus Louisville as well. So a little bit of experience there for Brock Glenn, but still not a ton of experience. But he did come into some of the big games. They did beat Louisville in that ACC championship game with Brock Glenn starter. Not like he played a great game, but not a ton of tape, not a ton of experience with Brock Glenn. There's a lot of unknown with him. It just makes me intrigued. In a 14.5 point line, that 14.5 point that's that hook that I really think could be the key here. Again, take it at 14.5. If this goes up, if it goes at 13.5 or 14, take it at 14.5. That's what I'm telling you guys. I think that 14.5 point hook is where we're going to go ahead and make our money here. And there is actually a slight discrepancy in the data. You see the public bet tickets, only 29% of the public is betting on Florida State, but 45% of the money is on the Seminoles. So it's not like the one earlier, right, that we saw with Missouri, Texas A&M, right? It's not that crazy, but you do see there is a little bit of sharp action there on Florida State. Again, I know Clemson's been rolling. There's not a ton I can go off of here to tell you guys. And obviously, most of the metrics aren't going to matter because that's not with DJ Uiagalelei. With these backup quarterback games, like I said, there's really nothing I can go ahead and show you guys that's going to convince you of taking this. Although Clemson's defense, 25.8 points per game, tied for 83rd in the nation in scoring defense. They're both outside the top 75 in passing and rushing. This Clemson defense, not particularly great. And again, I get it. Florida State's offense has been pretty abysmal this year as well, but backup quarterback game, Brock Glenn, you never know. And a 14.5 point spread against a Florida State team, I know they've been awful, but with a new quarterback in, maybe bring something new to the table. I'm not saying Florida State wins the game. I'm not saying they win. But 14.5 point underdog, I'm going to go and take Florida State here. I'm not telling you guys to put your house on it. Don't put your car on it. Don't ruin your marriage. Don't ruin your life over it. But I like Florida State here plus 14.5. I'm going to go with the backup quarterback game here and trust that Brock Glenn could at least keep the game somewhat respectable and somewhat close here. Maybe shock Clemson a little bit here. I don't know. Call me crazy, but when a backup quarterback's in, I like to go ahead and ride with the backup quarterback. So give me Florida State here plus 14.5. All right, guys, only a few picks left. Our next pick here, we're looking at Nevada, San Jose State, 7:30 p.m. kickoff. Now, normally I wouldn't target a game like this where you have two non-ranked schools. Not really a big game. Not really a game that I think a lot of people will be watching. I just took it because I think it's crazy this is only a 7-point spread. And depending where you're getting it, minus 105 BetMGM, minus 110 DraftKings, minus 110 Caesars, and minus 110 Bet365. This is all about the matchup, and I think San Jose State against Nevada's defense is an absolute lock here. This is a top 10 passing offense in the nation in San Jose State. They're getting 329 passing yards per game this season. That's 8th best in the country. Against the Nevada Wolfpack passing defense, that's 86th in the nation, giving up 224 passing yards per game. Teams have been throwing on this Nevada team all year long, but San Jose State in particular should be able to have their way with this defense. San Jose State, 34th in the nation, scoring 35.5 points per game. Nevada tied for 70th in scoring, giving up 23.6 points per game. Just look at all these metrics. No matter what you want to look at here, this Nevada defense is not very good now. Their run defense is 68th. San Jose State, though, they don't really run the ball. They throw the ball a shit ton here. I just like the spot overall. I just don't think Nevada's defense is going to be able to slow down the San Jose State passing attack. And then on the flip side, again, Nevada, 95th in the nation scoring. I just don't think that in any way Nevada's going to be able to hang with San Jose State here. Their defense, not very good. Their offense, not very good. Again, the big advantage here for San Jose State is that they're going to be able to throw the football all over this Nevada team. That's what I'm expecting here. So a 7-point spread, go ahead and give it to me. Again, I don't normally bet a game like this, but I just think I saw that matchup there. I think I had to bet it. Again, the top 10 passing team in the country against a team that's outside the top 80. Got to go ahead and take that spot. I'll tell you guys, these longer videos, love doing them for you, but my goodness, they take the wind out of me. That's for sure. But we're in the home stretch here, guys. 3 picks left in today's video. Let's go ahead and finish strong here, guys, for the people here. Next up, we actually have 2 picks coming from this Tennessee-Arkansas game. 7:30 p.m. kickoff on Saturday. We have Tennessee here, minus 13.5. And look, apologies. I know earlier, and I think it was week 4, maybe, an earlier video, when Tennessee played Oklahoma, I made a comment that Penn State was better than Tennessee, and I think I kind of disrespect Tennessee a little bit. I didn't give them their flowers. I didn't give them the credit they probably deserve. I think I can go ahead and comfortably say Tennessee, I don't think they're majorly better than Penn State, but I do think they're probably better. Not probably. They are better than Penn State. I do think Penn State is still really, really good, but I do think Tennessee obviously is the better team. Apologies to all those people I angered when I said that Penn State and Tennessee are pretty close. I think I said Penn State was better than Tennessee. Tennessee is definitely better than Penn State. Don't want to piss off Volunteer fans. That's for certain. But look, this is a great. I don't really understand why this isn't bigger. Tennessee obviously coming off of a bye week. They had their big win on the road versus Oklahoma. Then they had their bye week, and now they're on the road against Arkansas here. Against an Arkansas team that's had a kind of a rough run here. Now they did hang close with the Aggies last week, right? They did lose the game obviously, but they did hang close. But they've had a pretty tough. I mean, they played Oklahoma State, they played Auburn, they played Texas A&M, and most of those games have been on the road. They're now coming back home, which obviously that is the advantage. They have the home game here. They're actually 4-1 against the spread overall this year, and 100% on this plus 13.5 line this year. Again, Tennessee's obviously the toughest team they played so far this season. But I think the extra rest for the Volunteers, and then the fact that Arkansas overall have struggled at home. The Arkansas Razorbacks are 0-7 against the spread in their last 7 games at home, 0% hit rate. And we can go and look at that here, guys. It's not been like we're not talking about them. They're playing all these tough teams. Don't get me wrong. There are some tough ones there. Last year they lost to Missouri at home. They lost to BYU at home. A couple of decent games, but they're losing to like Mississippi State, Kent State, FIU, UAB this year. That's the only one so far this year they've lost at home. To be fair, they haven't played a ton of home games this season. But they've been really bad at home and against teams that are not particularly good. They lost 7-3 to Mississippi State. And I know it's last year, a different year, but 7-3 against Mississippi State. So yeah, I think Tennessee should absolutely roll them here. I know it's on the road or whatever. And Arkansas, again, they gave A&M a pretty tough test. At A&M too, they kept it within 4. Again, they're a fighting team for sure. But I just don't think the matchup's going to be anywhere close. Tennessee, the #1 scoring offense in the nation, 54 points per game. And again, Tennessee, they now can say they beat Oklahoma. They beat NC State. A couple of decent wins there on the season for Tennessee. This offense, obviously, top 5 in the nation in rushing, top 50 in passing. And then on the flip side there, Arkansas actually pretty good, 33rd in the nation scoring, 35.8 points per game. But again, this Tennessee defense tied for second best in the nation. They've only given up 7 points per game this year. Only 2 times they've given up 10 or more points. NC State, 10 points and 15 points to Oklahoma. And that was on the road too. So I just don't see where Arkansas keeps this game close. I think Tennessee, obviously, one of the top 5 teams right now in college football. -13.5 should be as close to a lock as you can get. Again, you get it from -110 on Caesars, -110 Bet365, and varying odds, -115 on FanDuel, -120 on DraftKings. Just a really good spot overall. And piggybacking off of, what a voice crack there. Jesus. That's what happens when you record for almost 40 minutes straight. The other pick I'm going with this game here is Tennessee, Arkansas. I'm going to Arkansas here under 22.5 points. Now, at first glance, that is not fantastic, right? They've only cashed it in 1 out of 5 games this year. They're averaging 35.8 points per game. Like I said, this Arkansas offense, 33rd in the nation in scoring. But, to be fair, you look at the teams they're scoring on, not very good defense. UAB, Auburn, Oklahoma State. Some of these teams were, like, defensively, I wouldn't call them juggernauts. They scored just 17 points in their last game versus the Aggies here, and this is the best defense they've played so far this year. Again, I think Tennessee covers a spread here. I just don't see Arkansas scoring over 23 points on this Volunteers defense. Again, looking at what Tennessee's done this year, they haven't given up more than 15 points in a game. Oklahoma scoring 15 is the most points they've given up in a game this year. I don't foresee Arkansas being the first team to score, 3+ touchdowns on them, right? 24 points obviously would cash the over here, 23 points, whatever. I just don't see Arkansas being the team that does it. Obviously, there are some games later in the year where Tennessee will play where I'm sure they'll give up this number. But so far, defense is really good. #1 pass defense. #1 against first downs, the 4th best pass defense, the 2nd best run. I mean, in every metric, they're really, really good. I just don't see Arkansas scoring a ton of points here. I just don't see it. 23 points is a lot. It is -150 too, which I think tells you all you need to know there. The fact that it's -150 should tell you this is a pretty good spot to bet. Again, good parlay pick to go ahead and throw in. If you want to go ahead and put a little extra units here, not a bad option. But I do like the spot here of under 22.5 points for the Razorbacks. All right, guys, we made it our 14th and final pick of today's video. We're looking at the UCF Florida game, 7:40 p.m. kickoff in the Swamp. We're going with the over here, 61.5. I think this is going to be a track meet game. I think you're going to see a ton of points scored. These are 2 bad defenses right now. You look at UCF here, tied for 77th in scoring defense, 24.8 points per game. Looking at Florida's defense, 91st in the nation, giving up 27.2 points per game. I didn't want to pick a side here at all because I really don't know what UCF coming off of that Colorado loss, and then Florida obviously being Florida. I just don't really want to take a side here. I think the total is the way to go. 2 defenses outside of the top 70. Again, Florida's offense not great, tied 55th, but 31.8 points per game. And then UCF, top 20 scoring offense, 39.5. These are both offenses that score over 30 points per game against defenses they're giving up almost 30 points per game, at least 25 points per game each. This is a high point total, obviously, but I still like the spot. The over has hit in 10 of the Florida Gators' last 12 games. And look at them. I mean, they both have key matchup categories where it makes sense. You see Florida 30th in the nation in passing yards, 278.5 passing yards per game. UCF, obviously, outside of the top 100, 106th in passing yards allowed, 251.5 per game. And then on the flip side here, this is the 2nd best rushing offense in college football, 326 rushing yards per game against a Florida defense that's tied for 1/10, gave up 188.8 rushing yards per game. So just really good matchups across the board here. I think it's going to be a lot of points. It's going to be a big, high-scoring game here, an absolute track meet. Love the over here, and available for -110 Caesars, -110 Bet 365, Bet MGM, and -119 DraftKings, -120 on FanDuel. All right, guys, we made it. Give yourself a round of applause if you are watching. I know we already did the giveaway contest earlier. We're not going to do another one here, but go ahead and comment 40. We're about to hit the 40-minute mark in this video. Comment 40. If you made it through the entire thing, if you really did, you deserve, again, some claps you deserve. Hat off to you guys. These long videos, I know a lot of people don't watch them all the way through. I do them because I have so many picks to share. I want to give you guys options. I always, when I used to do that, before I did my own videos, when I used to watch other people's videos, I used to love the videos that had all the games because it gives you so many options. So I want to do what that feeling that was for me, I want to do for you guys too. To give you guys plenty of options. Again, my record would probably be better if I narrowed these picks down. If I only did like 6, 7, 8 picks, you guys, my record would look better. But I don't really, I care about it, but I don't care, and I want to give you guys the option. So all 14 picks will be in the pinned comment down below. Real quick, all 14 picks. We have Florida State plus 14.5. The over in the Florida UCF game at 61.5. We have Arkansas under 22.5 points team total. Tennessee minus 13.5. Missouri money line. We have Penn State team total over 37.5 points. The Indiana Hoosiers minus 13.5. The Oregon Ducks, again, that's the giveaway contest. Comments down Ducks. And if it hits, you win a $15 Amazon gift card. Oregon Ducks under 38.5 points. The over 44.5 in the Iowa-Ohio State game. Georgia minus 22.5 points versus Auburn. North Carolina plus 3. We have Ole Miss minus 8.5. Oregon State minus 10.5. And San Jose State minus 7. So, guys, that does it for me today. Thank you very much, as always, for watching. One more time, guys, please make sure to hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, and drop a comment down below. I will obviously be back with another college football video next week. But until then, guys, I hope you're all winners. Enjoy Week 6 college football, and let's go win some motherfucking money. Let's go.